All right, thanks for watching the video today. So we are going into exploring all of your options for selling your home, renting your home, or going and buying a different rental property. And then all in mind, the goal is to be able to do the land development project and get you guys on some more acreage. So let's start walking through it. So we've got plenty of numbers here. I'm going to take a picture of all of this and then send that to you. So if you want to look at that as I'm talking, it might be a little bit easier than trying to read what's behind me, but let's get going. So let's start out with what we already know. Your current home, I believe, is worth $550,000. Your current loan is the $210,000. If you sold your current property, you would be netting about $307 after all expenses, everything is paid for on the sale. That covers agent fees, closing costs, all that fun stuff. So you'd be pocketing $307. If you decided though to keep your property and just pull money out to be able to go into the land development project, then you would be able to pull out $202,000 because the bank will give you 75% of $550. So of your current home's value, the bank will loan up to 75%. You'd be able to have 202 in your pocket, keep your current home, but that is going to change some things when it comes to monthly payment. And I'll get into a few of the hangups that we could encounter if we decide to go that route. If you have $100,000, $150,000 in your bank account that you're going to be putting towards the land development project, that dramatically changes things and does even give us even more options when it comes to figuring out what plan is best for you guys. Oftentimes when people are building, cash is always the problem. So a lot of times people are selling their home, they need that cash to go build. But if you have a very large cash reserve, $100,000 or more, then we are in a little bit of a different scenario, and we should have further discussion about that soon. So if you decide to sell your home, you would have a project budget for the land development piece of $187,000. So on the land development side, let's get into that. Looking at land and from selling land, I think that having a lot that you guys are probably looking for is going to be anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 realistically. So I use the high end of what that would cost to purchase the land. So that's the $400,000. On land, they're going to want to have at least 25% down. So that's where we got to the $100,000 down payment. So purchase price, down payment, and then project cost. That's a big question mark here. I don't know what the building that you're going to be putting up cost and or to be able to finish out the inside of the building. Obviously, those costs can dramatically vary if you're doing it yourself versus hiring other contractors. So from what our conversation was, sounded like you're going to be doing it a lot of yourself or having friends help out. So that cost might be lower than I would normally speculate. So that project cost is going to make a big difference when it comes to how much cash do we need to be able to pull this project off. This down here for the project budget, the 283 is basically what you would have if you decided to not buy the rental property and put everything into the land side. And on that, I do believe I encountered no, that's going to be if you put a different down payment on the rental. So forget about what I just said. We're going to get into that a little bit later. So, all right, if you kept your current property and did not pull a loan out on your current property to be able to go buy the land, you just rented it out as it is, I think you could rent it, and that $2,200 was kind of on the higher end of what we were talking. I think $2,000 is very realistic, but I do think we could probably get $2,200. So your monthly payment currently is $1,400, but if you need to pull money out of your current home, that money that you're pulling out and your overall loan based on how much you're needing to pull out, it's going to be a refinance, so you get a new interest rate. And that could be some of the kind of downside bad news about pulling money out of your current home is that new loan on your home, if it was today, is probably going to be 7% for the interest rate, which would then take your monthly payment from $1,400 up to $3,000. Now, the good news is if rates come down, which I do think that they will in the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully sooner, but at least 2 or 3 years, the monthly payment would go to 5% because you'd refinance the house that you're currently living in. And now that monthly payment would come down to $2,500. The thing I don't love about this is that obviously you're negative cash flowing now on your current property you live in. And I think we're bad on the negative cash flow part, But we're also bad on the fact of, I do think that the rental property has more room to appreciate upwards because the current property you're in has that limiting factor of the 2 bedrooms, the 1 bath. That does make things a little bit more difficult. And don't quote me on the 1 bath. I, for some reason, think that you guys put another half bath or another full bath in, but you can let me know when we talk later. So still, the 2 bedroom is a limiting factor, and that's what I'm concerned about when it comes to equity gain and overall equity potential. I think your current home is not going to appreciate as fast as necessarily a 3 bedroom, 2 bath home in Forest Grove or Newburgh or McMinnville, somewhere that's going to rent out quite easily. So if we decide, hey, let's go and we're gonna sell our current home and we are going to go purchase a rental property in Forest Grove, let's say, and use that as a rental. If you're going to be buying that as a rental property because you still own your current home or whatever the reason is there, let's say you buy the land first and then buy the rental as the afterthought, you would be forced to buy that as an investment property, which is going to require 25% down. So if you do that, you're going to be putting $110,000 into that rental property, which is then where our project budget for the land would be 187, because 187 plus 110,000 equals 307, which is what you'd be pocketing if you sold your current home. So on the rental side, if you put $110,000 down, your monthly payment at 7% would be $2,600. $2,600 is also what I think that property can rent for. I have personal experience with that with a property in Forest Grove, and I do know that people are getting that for rent, so that is not unrealistic. So you would be breaking even on the cash flow side, and I am not taking into account the $300 or $400 per month that tenant is paying towards the principal in your mortgage. So there is some extra cash flow there. It's just not cash going into your bank account. So that's why I phrase it a little bit differently. It's kind of a cherry on top, but I don't necessarily like to make complete decisions just off of, hey, well, they're paying our principal down. Let's go negative cash flow on it because it's fine. That's not really the best way to be thinking about it. The upside on that rental property is that you'd be locking in a lower sale price. And when interest rates come down, sale prices go up, because right now that house that's worth $440, well, we need to forget about the purchase price. What people are making decisions on is that monthly payment. So right now in the market, people are willing to pay $2,600 a month for a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house that's in reasonable condition and livable in Forest Grove. So what that means is that if rates go down to 5%, well, you already locked that in at $440. So rates go down to 5%, you can refinance at that time, and then the monthly payment for you guys would go down to $2,100. All right, now we're cash flowing by $500 a month. That's great. What I would actually do on this property, you asked me what I would specifically do. Instead of doing the land first, which is what we had previously talked about, what I would do if I were in your shoes is that I would sell my current home and buy the rental home as my next primary residence. We've got a really good excuse on why you would be doing that. Why would you move off of acreage to move into town? That 2-bedroom is going to be a great excuse on why you guys want to buy a primary home in town. What that's going to do is it means on a primary home, you only have to bring 5% down. So you're going to be able to keep a lot more cash in your pocket to be able to go do this project. So if I were in your shoes, what I would do is first buy a rental property in town. I'd sell my home, buy a rental property in town, move into that house, and then you'd have the flexibility, the cash in your pocket, and the flexibility, if this land project takes a little bit longer than thought, you would still be comfortable. You wouldn't be on acreage. It wouldn't be ideal. I know you're going to miss the deer, but it would allow you to keep as much cash in pocket and have a great house to live in for the time being until the land project is done. The land project down payment does not vary whether you're moving into it or not. If you're buying raw land, it requires 25% down no matter what. Some banks will go to 20%, but most are 25%. Your interest rate gets higher if you only do 20%. So at 5%, if you decide to only put 5% down, and the market interest rate is 7%, which is what they currently are, your monthly payment at that rental house that you're moving into would be $3,340 at 7%. Oh, that hurt me. That hurt me a little bit. But the benefit is that you are getting a loan to have all that cash in your bank account to go do this project at a rate of only 7%, which is a lot better than what you would get if you were doing a hard money loan. And I mean, it's immensely better than credit card debt or even car loans. It competes with that. So yes, the monthly payment hurts, but that is not the long-term goal with that property, is not to keep the payment at that amount. So if rates come down to 5% and you don't contribute any extra money towards that loan to pay it down, and rates come down to 5%, your monthly payment would be at $2,800. I don't necessarily see you guys staying in that rental house for that long as your primary home. I think you want to get on the land as soon as possible. So what I would do is that when this project is done and you have extra money left over, hopefully, I would encourage that, you're going to take all that extra money and you're going to put it towards paying this loan down. But it's already locked in, so you don't have to refinance or anything. You're just paying that loan. Well, technically it would be a refinance, but you're paying that loan down and you're getting that new interest rate at 5%, and that's how we're going to get back eventually to that $2,100. But what's nice about structuring it that way or doing it in that order is the fact that if this ends up costing a little bit more money than what you had originally thought, then you're going to have that cash available and you're not going to be stuck in limbo. And then at 5%, so if you decided to wait until rates come down to buy another rental property, well, if rates come down to 5%, I know that these homes were selling from anywhere from $500,000 to $520,000 about 3 years ago. So if you decide to wait to buy that rental property, you might be looking at a purchase price of $500,000. What I would really like to see is to buy that rental property when rates are still up high, because then you can capitalize on that equity gain. And the equity gain from the 440 to 500, we've got a $60,000 safety net now that you'd be able to capitalize on, even though your monthly payment's higher, and that's going to be a bit uncomfortable for a little bit until we can do the refinance or contribute more money to it. But it's the opportunity to pick up that extra $60,000 in equity appreciation. And it's going to be a lot easier, in my opinion, to have that rental home go from 440 up to 500 than it would be to have your current home go from 550 to 600 or 625. And so at 7%, if you put 25% down on the rental, your cash flow would be $0 a month. But there's also that principal they're paying towards, so that is some upside. And once you refinance it at the 5% rate, then your cash flow would go up to $500 a month. That's awesome. That's what we want to see. The real kicker is at the time when rates come down and you're able to get that $500 a month in cash flow, you're also capitalizing on that property's going up in value because rates came down. So you have an extra $60,000 in value you gained, plus you have $500 a month in cash flow that you're able to realize. So that is a really good scenario. I like that. If it were me, long story short, I would sell my current home, buy a rental property as my primary, keep as much cash in my bank account as possible, move into that home that you're buying as your primary. It's going to be a rental in the future. And when you're in that rental, I would take my time, go out and shop for land, be able to buy a place at a piece of land for $300,000 to $400,000, put $100,000 down. You're going to have a bunch of extra money. In fact, $283,000. That was where that number came from. $283,000 to now have potentially you can put towards this project. The goal would be, though, is to have this project cost as little as possible while also building a property that's going to be able to fit as many people as possible if you ever have to sell that. So my concern on having the budget be a little bit too small on the land development side is that if you decide to cut corners or make the living space in the barn dominium, let's say 1,400 square feet instead of 2,000 square feet, that is going to hurt the resale price. And I do think that it's worth building a barn dominium that larger families could fit into, or just not cutting yourself too short on that project. I would encourage you to invest in that. The goal, though, is to keep as much money in pocket as possible, no matter what, obviously, that's the goal, but to keep as much as you can in your pocket, because if things go down, or when you decide to move into this house, into this property, and you want to refinance that rental property, if you can keep $110,000 free, which actually at this point it would be about $85,000 free, you could put that 85 grand towards paying this mortgage down. and then you would be right back into what we were talking about before, and you'll be out of that pain of having the $3,300 a month payment or the $2,800 a month payment. You'd be back in the $2,600 or $2,100 based on where interest rates are at that time. So on the land development project, my goal on this, or what I would advise, is to be able to have the end value of that property be worth around $725,000. So my goal for you is to see if you can fit that project budget into about $600,000. Now, $400,000 of that is going to be the land, and you're only putting the 100K down. So that helps get some get some there. And then if your home building project, I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around the $200,000 range-ish. If you're buying the, the steel building and all of that, then your total project cost for the land plus the building and construction, you'd be at $600,000. And where I don't want to really see happen is if you cut too many corners and you really try to do the entire project for, let's say, $500,000 or even less, I don't think in the long run it's going to be a good idea to do it that way, because if you make a smaller house, that's going to impact the long-term value. And if you only spend, let's say, $500,000 total on the building project, including the land purchase, I think you'd probably come out in the end of where that house and property is going to be worth maybe $600,000. I'd really rather see you spend a little bit more on that and build something that we could resell for $725,000. The reason for that is because it's going to give you a much bigger safety net in case something did come up or something happened. If you can pull that project off with the $100,000 down, so you're going to have a mortgage, you would have the ability to hopefully add a $130,000 safety net, because when you refinance, or if you want to pull money out of here, they're going to do that. Remember the 25% of the property value versus what they'll loan you. So at $725,000, I added up as well to what your mortgage and everything would be. You would have $130,000 that you could pull out of that property if you had, medical emergency, something came up, whatever it was. Obviously, if you sold that property at $725,000, you're going to get a lot more money in your bank account than $130,000. But the $130,000 was just the equity that you're going to have from going through the whole building process on your own and bringing that project to life. So if you don't build a property or build a home, barndominium, whatever you want to build, that would have a resale value of $725,000, then we're probably looking more in that $600,000 total project value range on resale, and that hurts your safety net a lot. So I want to give you as many options as possible. Any decision we make, we don't want to be making that to where it pigeonholes us into either having to being forced to sell the property. If it's always good to be able to have the option of, well, we could sell it or we could just pull some more money out. Whatever the decision is, it's your decision to be made at the time of needing those funds if you need it, worst case scenario. But it's nice to not get in a situation where you'd be forced to sell anything. So that's my other big goal for you guys. I added utility costs in here. That's I'm thinking probably $25,000 to $50,000 on the higher end. If utilities are going to be more than $50,000, we're talking about well, septic, power, there is probably going to be a big impact on the sale price. So those lots are going to be worth a lot less. That's where you see lots for sale maybe at $200, $250, $180. It's probably because the power's a half a mile away and you're going to have to spend $80,000 or $100,000 bringing that in. So if we see land listed, I'd say anything less than probably $300,000, most likely it's listed for less than that because there's going to be a much higher cost to bring utilities in or to build. If it's on a slope, then you have a lot more foundation cost, all that fun stuff. So on this land property, if you decide basically the end value at 7%, that would be, if you have the 25% down, or I'm sorry, if your project cost is around that 600 and you've been putting it 25% down for the land and you paid for all of the construction out of cash in your pocket, the loan on that's going to be pretty small because it's really just for the land. So at that, you're looking at probably around a $3,000 a month for a monthly payment at 7%. And this big number here, the $4,100 a month at 7%, is if you decided, hey, we just finished our building project, we want to restock our cash reserves in our bank account, we want to pull out that $130,000, that's where the monthly payment would go up by about $1,100 by pulling that 130 out. But hey, it's an extra $1,100 per month, so about $13,000 per year approximately. Can you make $130,000? Is there something you could do with that that would make you more than 11 grand a year? That's something you could ask about. But I don't like to see people do needless refinances, so definitely call me before you're thinking about doing that, and I'd be happy to walk through that whole situation for you. This lower number, the 2,500, would be at the same time rates come down to that 5%, you'd want to refinance this land property no matter what, because that's going to take your loan from $3,000 down to $2,500, and that's much more in the range of where you guys are comfortable. And what it depends upon of where that monthly payment is you could decide, hey, do we want to just keep our payment at $3,000, refinance, get that lower interest rate, and frankly, you'd probably be able to pull like $100,000 out of that property at that time if you ended up being comfortable with that $3,000 a month payment. So you have plenty of options here. My end summary is that the absolute best way on the real estate side to do it, not life and convenience and all the things that, or the more, I won't say emotional, but more of the, it just doesn't feel right. The best way to go about this would be to sell your current home, buy the rental property, only put 5% down. You're going to have a higher monthly payment, but we know that that's going to be fixed. You'll have a $283,000 in your bank account to go do this land project. On the land project, you'd put $100,000 down for the down payment to buy the land. You'd have $183,000 left to then actually put up the building, the shop, to build out the barn dominium. That should be able to make some good progress. But again, if you put all that money and spend that cash buying into the building, we're still probably going to want to pull money out of this and shift it towards the rental property so then that property can cash flow. But the moral of the story is that in any of these ways, there's ways to be able to move the money around to where it's going to cover all of it. I would recommend moving into the rental property, putting 5% down, buying the land, building the 20, 30-year home, the forever home, and then taking whatever money's left over, put that in refinance, put that towards the rental property, get that down to a nice cash flowing spot where you're realizing money each month coming in or covering costs or damage that comes up. And really, I think that is the best way to go about it. So the big questions is that if you have money in your bank account to the tune of $100,000 plus and you don't need to refinance your current home, I completely understand the desire to not sell that, keep it, that's your baby. I know it is, it's the first home you bought. It's such an awesome property too, I get it. But when it comes to the financial side, I don't necessarily think that keeping the current property is what makes sense the most in the end when it comes to maintenance on the rental, yard work on the rental, and then also how many people can rent out a 2-bedroom home. I think we're also limited there when it comes to market value on rent. So I think that's everything we got. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully this helped make more sense and provide some clarity on what the best next step would be. And there are a bunch of off-ramps within all of this information. So please let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for hanging in there and congratulations. You guys did a great job buying your very first home. You gave yourself so many options. So I love to see it. Embrace the potential complications with a lighthearted attitude. That's exactly what we're doing. Life gets more complicated when we have more options. You guys did a great job of giving yourself options. So let's keep on that trend with the next ones and navigate this in the best way possible. So I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.